Hey guys, Comet here. Welcome back to my Needy Duplicant series in Oxygen Not Included. In the last episode, I captured a lot of geysers. So I added this natural gas geyser and this natural gas geyser. I tapped these two saltwater geysers. Well, this one's brine, but this one's saltwater. I found this geyser here for polluted water. And I found another polluted water vent over here. So I've just been buffering all of that extra water into these two tanks here. And I also got the sour gas problem under control by digging out a little bit more space. Now you may notice that this is new, and this is to help with today's project. This has one job. It turns two pipes of polluted water into ceramic. It's very minimal dupe labor with all of these autosweepers. The only thing the dupes actually have to do is come in here and destroy these reservoirs, and then build them back. You end up with a bunch of bottles of polluted water, and you can trick them into off-gassing by putting them in a really thin layer of crude oil, so that their pressure is less than 1,800 grams. So down here, right, there's no gas, it's just that thin layer of crude oil, so these bottles are constantly off-gassing. And if we look at the mass, there's over 20 tons in there. And the amount they off-gas is proportional to their contents. So this is just churning out the polluted oxygen, and that goes into all of these deodorizers here. And the clay that gets made gets shipped back up to these kilns here. Sand is supplied in these two loaders. Coal is supplied here and here. And then any extra clay that might be around the map, I just have my duplicants put into these side things here that join up with the clay there. But this isn't meant to be the focus of today's video. I want to get into some mega projects. So I have a spreadsheet here to inform the general structure of the build I want to put in. It's going to be a massive arbor tree farm that produces three main things: food, polluted water, and power. And there's a couple variations of this. I could use domestic arbor trees or wild arbor trees. If I use wild arbor trees, the numbers get kind of extreme. I can use sage hatches or compost, and there's a bunch of other variations I can do. But I'll just zero all of these out and go over how I came up with all of the numbers on the scalar column. So the arbor tree takes polluted water, produces lumber, and it also requires some dirt. If they are wild planted, they don't take any polluted water and they don't take any dirt. They still produce lumber, only at 1/4 the rate though. That's important. If we run the lumber into a distiller, you can see that costs 1,000 lumber. This is all in grams per second. It makes polluted dirt, ethanol, and CO2. So I've input all of these numbers across here for the different recipes, we'll call them. And I can come up with some scalars here to make sure I get some balanced numbers down here at the bottom. And if you're curious what the formula is, it's just the sum product. I'll start with the petroleum generator. I want to run one full pipe of ethanol, and that is 5 petroleum generators. We can take a look at what that did to the numbers. We will be producing 3.7 kilos of polluted water and consuming 10 kilos, that's one full pipe, of ethanol. We'll also be producing a lot of CO2 and power. So now we need to solve this negative ethanol problem. Ethanol is made in the distiller at a rate of 500 grams. So this goes to 20, and that zeroes out ethanol now. That causes another problem. Now we have no lumber. So to solve that, I can use either domestic arbor trees or wild arbor trees. Let's first take a look at wild arbor trees that don't require any inputs. That would take about 150 to zero that out. It's okay to have a tiny surplus because wood can be used for other buildings like the sauna and stuff like that. And these trees aren't going to have constant uptime because duplicants have to actually run to the tree to harvest the branches, and that takes time. So I'm not going to plant 150 wild arbor trees. That is kind of ridiculous. I don't even have 150 seeds to plant. We're going to go with the domestic route. And I know if I do 42 trees, I get some really good numbers. Now that does unfortunately require polluted water and dirt now, but dirt can be supplied by either composts or by pips. Now if I do the compost route, I don't get any food out of it, so I'd rather take the pip route and get some free food. So how many pips would it take to zero out dirt? Well, if we do it in batches of 8, so that's a full farm, then 3 full farms would be enough to supply all of the dirt. Now, based on the specific architecture of the tree farm I'm going for, I know I can fit 48 pips. And if we notice lumber, they do eat a little bit of lumber. Now, they don't directly eat the wood, but they eat the tree growth, which just reduces how much lumber the tree eventually produces, so it's effectively like they're eating lumber. So that's how I account for it here. But now we have positive lumber, positive dirt. Just need to solve the negative polluted water problem. And that's where the carbon skimmers come in. 2, to still get positive polluted water, and that would only require 2 kilos of clean water per second. But I know, based on everything I've sketched out already, that I'm going to have 20 carbon skimmers. Well, how is that possible, though? Won't we have negative CO2? Yes, but that is because I don't plan on having just 5 petroleum generators in this system. I plan on having 10. Well, doesn't that mean I need more distillers? No, because half of the petroleum generators, so just 5 of the generators, will be supplied with ethanol. The other 5 will be supplied by petroleum. So the ethanol generators will be constantly running, and if I need more power, then I'll turn on the petroleum generators doing petroleum. But I do want to scale this for maximum output, just in case, things go wrong. It's better to have more capacity. So even with 20 carbon skimmers, this is still overproducing CO2. So that's where the slicksters come in. I want to have 80 slicksters, and that brings it just under. So as long as these carbon skimmers don't run constantly, there will be enough food for all of these slicksters always. And if the petroleum generators are running, all 10 of them are running constantly, then I do have the backup carbon skimmers to remove any excess carbon dioxide that these slicksters can't eat. Now there is one last variation, and that is choosing between poke shells and sage hatches. Now both of these will consume the polluted dirt made by the ethanol distiller. So I have to choose between sand as an output or coal as an output. I plan on having stone hatches later on into the series, eating igneous rock for coal. And I'm not really using coal at that high of a rate right now. I don't think I ever will be. So I'm more inclined to take this poke shell route instead. That way I can get sand back out, and sand is a very useful filtration medium, especially when I'm throwing so much sand into trying to make ceramic. So what number here would zero out the polluted dirt here? Let's take a look. 50? Almost. 56? Closer. 57? Ooh, super close. Let's go with a multiple of 8 and do 56. So there's a tiny bit of extra polluted dirt, which is okay. I can run that into some compost somewhere. Maybe like 2 composts would be fine. So I would prioritize the polluted dirt going to the poke shells, but if they can't eat it all, then compost can take care of the rest. No problem there. But the final outputs of everything here, you can see we make almost 13,000 kilowatts. Get some excess crude oil from the slicksters. Get a ton of sand. About a kilo of dirt per second. A little extra lumber to build stuff with. This will take quite a bit of water. That's 2 full pipes of clean water. Assuming constant uptime on all 10 petroleum generators, though. And I don't expect all 10 to always be running, so this number will, in practice, be much less. So now I just need to build something that matches all of these numbers here. And this will be modeled after the Arbor tree farm that I built in the Overly Scienced series. I think the numbers are a tiny bit different here, and the overall architecture of the farm will be a little bit different as well. I did not incorporate any slicksters in that one, and in this one I definitely do want to incorporate slicksters. So first things first, mega projects require mega space. And I think the best spot for this, I've got a lot of area cleared out over here already, and I know the basic dimensions. It will fit between this geyser and that volcano there. And I know it will fit between this volcano and the neutronium on the left there. So I'll put in a bunch of ladders. I'll issue a ton of dig commands. And then just turn the dupes loose on that. That's gonna take them a while. Alright, so this top part is pretty much done now. Everything's been dug out. Just waiting on this bottom part. Now I am putting in some plastic to smooth off the edge here. So I want to start working on the plan now. I'll get in the leftmost wall. Now I have to be careful of this volcano here. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to capture that in the future. So I'm going to leave a little bit of space. I think the ceiling will be here. This left wall needs to be insulated. And I'm going to have plastic ladders so that my duplicates are nice and speedy. This first layer up here, this is going to be where the steam turbines go. Then I'm going to need 3 tiles for an aqua tuner. And then the first floor will be here at this level. And this top portion will be where all of the arbor trees are grown, along with the pips. So I'll get in a door, and then this needs to be 96 total tiles. So right here would be the exact center at 24 tiles wide. Then on this side, I need to come out another 24 and put in a door. And then that will be where the plastic ladder on this side goes. So I'm getting really close to this wall here. And all of this insulated tiling will be made out of ceramic. I have tons of ceramic now. The hydroponic farms for the arbor trees are going to be every 2 tiles. And I can fit 7 of them. And this is how I came up with the 42 arbor trees that I'll be housing, because it is 7 per ranch. And then I'll have 3 floors of ranches, 2 on each side. That gives me 6 times 7 trees. That is 42 trees. So that's enough to feed all of the pips to make the dirt back, and have some lumber left over for just generic building if I ever need wood for stuff. So I'll copy this farm layout on the next floors. I also forgot about the grooming stations. This area will need to be maintained at a reasonable temperature for the trees. So I could just make the grooming stations out of iron ore is fine. Shouldn't be anything hot here. All of the hot stuff will be down below this 3rd level of ranches. So there does need to be some sort of insulation between the two. So I'll do granite, just regular tiles, and then insulated tiling out of ceramic. The level directly below the trees will be all of the distillers. And these have to be kept below about 75, not just for their overheat temperature. Boy, these don't even have an overheat temperature. Well, they kind of do. This is the point I'm trying to make. If we look at the description of the ethanol it outputs, it will be at least 73 degrees. But if the machine is hotter than that, even though the distiller doesn't have an overheat temperature, it does in practice, because ethanol boils at 78 degrees. So if the machine is any hotter than 78 degrees, it produces ethanol gas instead of ethanol liquid, and it just breaks the output pipe. So the building won't function in the same way it won't function if it just overheated itself. So this area needs to be kept below about 75. I want a little bit of buffer. And I need 20 of these in total. Now I could fit 5 there with a gap in between. And then another 5 down here with a gap in between. And then just mirror that on this side. All of their outputs will join up. And I'm doing insulated piping for this, because I don't want to spend any cooling on the ethanol. If I just cool the distiller, then the ethanol output will be colder. These machines will probably be kept significantly colder than the output ethanol. So I don't want any of the heat from the ethanol to bleed back into the machine, because then any ethanol that machine makes again will just keep warming up. So I think this is the most heat efficient way of doing this. Yeah, I think the best spot for the generators is just right underneath the distillers here. That'll give the pipe the shortest distance to travel. These I will also make out of iron ore. I'll get 5 on each side. The slickster ranches will be right underneath that. But I don't plan on running hot slickster ranches. I'm going to stay away from molten slicksters, because this whole area has to be cooler because of the distillers. And again, these slicksters aren't for their crude oil. I just need them to consume CO2. I don't care if it's a molten slickster or a regular slickster. And I plan on keeping this area at about 75 degrees, so the regular slicksters would be completely fine with that. So these 5 will be fed from the distillers, and then these 5 will be fed from petroleum being made back down over here. And eventually it will be connected up to a petroleum boiler, but not quite there yet. Alright, now I can design the slickster ranches, and I need 80 slicksters. That's a lot of slicksters. With 8 per ranch, that would be 10 ranches. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10. The very bottom floor here will be for carbon skimmers. I need 20 of these, so I'll do 10 on each side. And then below that, this can be the catch basin. This will be where all of the crude oil and polluted water will accumulate. You know what? I just had a better idea. These will not be oriented horizontally. They will be oriented vertically. I think that will simplify the egg collection. Because then instead of needing sweepers across all of the floors, I would only need them at the very bottom here. Now, I can't do the same thing with the pips and the trees up here, because I need the horizontal space for the trees. Right, this is not for pips, this is for trees primarily. The pips are just here to provide the dirt to keep the trees fertilized. And that doesn't change any of the dimensions of the total build. I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 farms. All the appropriate size, 96 tiles. I can plan out the plumbing for the carbon skimmers here. So I'll need one pipe that just feeds all of those. But I will need a second pipe to get water into there. I can't just run the outputs together, so I'll need to come up one and then over. So here, I'll come up 2 and then over. Alright, and something like that should work fine. I have to be careful that they don't always run, right? I want to prioritize slicksters first. They should get all of the CO2. Then, if pressure gets too high, if the slicksters can't keep up, then they'll go ahead and turn on. So I'll put in an atmos sensor for these 5 here, and these 5 here. Then for these 5 here, and these 5 here. So the automation will look like this. I can start thinking about duplicate transportation. There will need to be some kind of access down here for these farms, and some kind of access up here for these. And I think I want to use transit tubes for that. I can fit just one here. Do another one over here. And then connect those up. I can have crossing point here. And then something similar up top here by the steam turbines. So this tube can go up and over the steam turbines, and then out of this wall right here. Now, if CO2 pressure is ever above the maximum these can detect, I want them to turn on. That means the slicksters are failing to eat all of the CO2. And I want this room to act as like a CO2 sequester buffer. Because there'll be 2 conditions that turn these carbon skimmers on. One is if pressure's too high, they have to run. But secondarily, if I need polluted water for something, then I could just run some clean water into here to get polluted water. And because there's such a stockpile of CO2, I always have access to polluted water. I think to power all of this stuff, I'll just use a heavy watt conductive wire, because then I can just link everything up to the same thing, and not have to worry about any transformers. I will need some transformers to get power into the aquatuner room, and so I could have this half of the auto sweepers run off of that same power transformer, and same for this side. Now for the auto sweepers in the Slickster ranches, those I think I'm going to need a separate transformer for. So I'll slide the transit tubes over to the very edges. And then that will give me just enough room for the small power transformer on both sides. Then I can get some conductive wires up into this area. And then this could also feed the water pumps down here. I haven't quite worked out where exactly I want these, but I don't think it matters all that much. So the majority of the output will be polluted water. So I'll have them point towards the center. I'll run just in a regular pipe, this doesn't have to be insulated, into the inputs of the filters. And they only use power when they are separating the searched for liquid. So crude oil, since there will be less of that, I'll search for crude oil, drop that down into its own output, and then polluted water can come out this way. I don't want these pumps running all the time, so I'm going to get some automation and tell them just to turn on when there's a little too much liquid down here. Alright, now I think it's time to figure out the cooling loops. And the one thing I did not include on my spreadsheet was how much heat these all make. So the distillers make 4.5 kilodtus. I've got 20 of them. So 4.5 times 20 is 90 kilodtus. And then I've got 10 petroleum generators, each making 20. So that's 200. Plus the 90 is 290. We'll round up to 300. It's always nice to have some margins. The aquatuner can move 585 if it's using water. I think I'll be okay with just 2. One for the trees and one for all of the generators. Now, I could keep this symmetrical and have the aquatuners cool off the trees first, and then using granite liquid pipes, just normal pipes, not insulated, I could try and pick up a little bit of heat from down here, but not so much that it overpowers the 14-degree difference before going into the tree area. So I'm going to try this. I'll put some plumbing here. So we'll go up and into the aquatuners after returning from the hot area. It needs to come out and then immediately down. I think I'll alternate. Now, here's what I'll do. I'll use normal piping everywhere except right by the tree in a switchback pattern like this. I need to jump over the irrigation lines. And I'll use exclusively normal piping for the warmer area. But it has to be insulated on its return back through the trees. So the hottest point of the loop should be down by the generators, and the coldest point of the loop should be up here in the tree area. And I'll intentionally go through the flooring here so that I can swap some of them out for metal tiles. So I need to maintain airflow so that CO2 can go from the distillers down into the slicksters, but I need some kind of tiling here because carbon dioxide is a terrible conductor. So I need something in this area other than carbon dioxide where I can absorb some heat from. And then at that point, I think it can run back through the generators. I'm going to switch to insulated because everything on the return should be the warmest. I don't want it to drop off some heat from, or pick up some heat from here and then drop it off here. Because the distillers do need to be a little bit colder than the generators. So by keeping everything flowing down and not allowing any heat transfer on its way back up, I should guarantee that the warmest point is right here. Okay, so that cooling loop's not too bad, considering how much extra piping there is for the ethanol, petroleum, polluted water. I was able to go around everything. I also need to figure out how to get some cooling up to the steam turbines. Otherwise, they'll eventually overheat on me. You know, I don't need 2 outputs. I could just have a single vent here in the middle. And the turbines can go into that. That would free up a little bit of space on the sides where I could run some piping. So it will go out of the aqua tuner on this side. It'll go up. And then into some radiant piping. And then down. So now the steam turbines will actually be getting the coldest portion of the loop. But I think that will be okay. These won't be producing all that much heat. So if the cooling loop is ever above 35, go ahead and turn on. I just need to keep this room under the 40 degrees that arbor trees stifle at. Pretty sure it's 40 degrees. Yeah, in between 15 and 40. Then to get power down into the aqua tuners, I could just use some transformers up here, because this area will be actively cooled. And I'm thinking I can use this space either here or up here for some incubators. Because I will need to process the pip eggs and the slickster eggs. Alright, now I need to figure out all of the shipping paths. I don't want my duplicants to be supplying all of this. That would be way too much labor. So I'm going to need some sweepers to pick up the lumber from up top, send it down to here. These sweepers will also pick up the dirt from the pips and auto-fertilize the trees. So the only duplicate interaction will be ranching the pips and harvesting the trees, not fertilizing the trees. Then down here, I need to get polluted dirt out of this area into the poke shell ranch. That'll probably have to wait for next episode. That's not integral to the functionality of this. That's just to consume a byproduct. The pips are essential because I need to fertilize the trees. I guess technically the slicksters aren't essential either. But that's where my main source of food is going to be, so I'm going to consider them essential. Make sure I can hit everything. I'll do one there, overlapping by one tile. I need to be able to reach the very corners, because you never know where those pips are going to be. I'll put the loader right here and right here for all 3 floors. This will be processing 2 different items, so I'll need a filter. I'll be picking up eggs and lumber. I don't care about the dirt, that can just stay in the room. That's the whole point of the pips. So I think I'll filter out lumber, because the pips will have a chance to lay cuddle pip eggs, and I can only filter for pip eggs or cuddle pip eggs, but not both. But if I filter lumber, then the rest, being pip and cuddle pip eggs, can just go up to some holding area. So I'll ship down all of the lumber, and then ship up all of the pips. Then in all of the gaps, I'll get in an auto sweeper here. That way I am guaranteed to have full coverage. I'll need some loaders to handle the polluted dirt. And some receptacles for all of the lumber. So this half will feed all the way to there before moving to the next slot. I want to be careful not to send the polluted dirt through the floor. I want it to stay in the carbon dioxide so it doesn't give off its heat. The carbon dioxide will insulate it. But if I run it through the floor, then the cooling loop will pick up the heat from the polluted dirt, and I don't want that. So all of these will ship out this way. Very careful not to go through any flooring. And then all of the polluted dirt can just join up here. And I'll put in a poke shell ranch, I guess in between these volcanoes. Then the last thing I need to do is get power to all of these things. Down here, this can all just be part of the heavy watt wiring. But up here, I can just pull off of these transformers. And it is safe to do this, because not all of these will be running at the same time. I think I might beautify this a little bit. How about I get some forest drywall in the tree area. I think a build this grand deserves a little bit of beautification. This whole area is going to be clogged with CO2. So maybe we go with this charcoal diagonal. I have an idea here. If I run the diagonal like this, I could do solid charcoal, and then the base color and will it let me rotate this? Oh, yeah. That's gonna look really good. Ooh, there's one last idea. I want to use the wood panel to border everything. Oh yeah, this is definitely way better. Play definitely knew what they were doing when they added these blueprints. I actually stopped playing regularly right before blueprints were a thing. So this is my first time really trying them out, and I gotta say, they are fantastic. I'm not too sure how I feel about the direction reversal on the diagonals, but I'm getting a little too distracted with wallpaper. I really like this up here. I might change this later, but I need to focus on functionality right now. So I will set these filters to wood. Ship out all of the wood. The loaders, these need to be set to critter eggs and wood. I want the dirt to stay in here. I don't want to ship it out anywhere. That way the autosweepers can just pick it up off the ground and put it into the hydroponic farm. These conveyor loaders down here need to be set to polluted dirt. And then I need to get some shipping up in this area to deal with all of these slickster eggs. For now, I think I'll just dump all of the slickster eggs down here. I'll figure out what to do with them later once I see how things are kind of progressing. Because I haven't tested this. It's all theory so far. So I need to see how it functions to know if I need to make any tweaks to it. I think I can start moving over some critters. I'll set these to slicksters. Max of 8. I'll set these to pips. Max of 8 as well. I'll plant the arbor trees. And then figure out the routing on the polluted water. So I'll get in another pump right here. And this will just send polluted water back over to the tree farm. Alright, now I've got to get these cooling loops going, but I have polluted water right here already, so that shouldn't be too difficult to do. I could just bridge in there, and bridge in right there. I can't forget the buffer. So right here and right here. I'll get in a gas pump. I need to come up with some kind of a liquid lock here. I think maybe something like this will work. Just get this out of the way. And drop in a little blob of crude oil there. Now I need to get some clean water over to this room. I think I'll steal some from this line here. Nice, okay, now we've got some cooling going. Temperatures seem to be pretty okay. I think I can get away with some radiant piping down here by the generators. And then, oh, I forgot about the radiant piping in the floor. Yeah, that's important. Alright, now I think it's time to get the petroleum over to this half. Routing this pipe is going to be a nightmare. Because I don't have space on the main bus yet. I guess I could come through here. But then, how do I get it to there? Alright, I'll just do another set of bridges. Instead of going into the generators here, it's gonna go over this way. So I don't need these anymore. Alright, here comes the second pipe of fuel. Oh, that is glorious. And now all of my carbon dioxide will be sequestered into this single box here, rather than flowing out into the base. Looks like I had a little bit of an accident here. Some naphtha got up here. I'll clean that out between episodes. Just looking around at what else has happened while I was so focused on other stuff. No, I think I'm good. I need to relocate the pips now. Right, that's what I'm missing. So these 3 farms, let's just wrangle all of that. Alright, everything looks to be working now. Got a constant flow of lumber. Polluted dirt is getting exported. These haven't stuttered at all yet. These over here, these are backed up because I don't think I'm making enough petroleum. Yeah, because I have so much power right now, these natural gas generators aren't running because they're being throttled by the battery, the smart battery here. Because I have so much power being generated back over there, these can't run. So I'm getting a backup of natural gas, which is plugging up these refineries. Now I should probably move these as well. That way I can capture their output. But I am running out of time for this episode. It is 5 in the morning. I have accomplished what I wanted to accomplish here. I am turning lumber into food, water, and power. I'll go through all of the overlays. So this is the plumbing overlay. I've tried to keep it as symmetrical as possible so it's easy to follow. Here is the shipping overlay. I think that's a little simpler than the plumbing overlay. There is no ventilation. And then here is the automation overlay, just a little bit up here to control the aqua tuners, and a little bit down here to control the carbon skimmers in case I get too much CO2 in here. And some hydrosensors on these pumps down here. So that's the first large project for this series. I might figure out some more drywall patterns for the rest of it. I haven't really played around with drywall too much, but I do really like the pattern I came up with for the tree portion. That looks really nice. So I'm going to stress test this between episodes to make sure there's no problems with it. I think I've got everything sorted out, but you never know. I think in the next episode, I'll turn my attention to natural gas and the oil biome down here. So I haven't had these oil wells on for a very long time. I've drained out almost all of the crude oil that I had saved up, because I want to clean up this area, get all of the different water types out of here so that it's just crude oil. And then I might make a little area for the refineries so that they can never overpressurize. And then these natural gas generators, I'm not too sure what I'm going to do with that yet. I could just put them underneath this whole thing here, and then pipe in the carbon dioxide. But I still have to do something with the polluted water they generate. But now that I'm not making tons and tons of polluted water for the floor here, I can get the whole bottom of the map cleaned up, and then extend the main transportation column through the old base. I can remove these farms and start thinking about where I'm going to put my duplicate housing. I also need to think about the poke shell ranch as well. It's okay to turn this polluted dirt into dirt for now, but I would like sand instead. So there's a lot to think about for the next episode, but I am very happy with this whole thing here. Get one last shot of it before I go. I'll also have to come up with a system of dealing with the eggs more permanently rather than just leaving them scattered around here. But that will all have to wait for next episode. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.